At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Carbine, it's multimedia. You can get text, translate to whatever language, getting away with the legacy equipment and going into a cloud-based solution.
It's the first time in U.S. history that we have an EZNet through cloud-native call handling.
As a police officer, to have the victim go video, that's unheard of.
You're getting upgrades every month, not every year.
To schedule your free Carbine demo, please visit carbine.com/WTT.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This is episode 460. Whew. Yep, I said it, 460. We are not far from 500, and I think the last I saw, the numbers are at 1.86 plus million downloads, and this podcast is heard in over 60 countries, which is amazing. We're trying to reach that goal of 2 million by January 2023, and that is because this podcast started going on almost 10 years ago. Man, it is something else. I never expected for any of this to happen this way, but it's amazing. And thank you all for listening, sharing, supporting, and just all of it. So thank you so much. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Carbine, and a big shout out to patrons as always. Thank you very, very much for everything. I am fresh back from Bandera, Texas. Actually flew into San Antonio, drove down to Bandera for the Mayan Ranch, the leadership and training dispatchers retreat that the 360-degree dispatcher puts on. That is Joe Serio, and it was an excellent time there. I was there just for a couple days out of the 4 that they have, but just in those couple days, it was really good, and it was awesome to meet all of you that were out there, but also to do the closing session, which was Imagine Listening. And it was super powerful to do that. There's not a dry eye in the room. And then, of course, the last part of Imagine Listening is open mic, where we share all of the funny shit that happens in 911, all of the funny stories. And so we start out emotionally intense, but then we finish off with laughter, and laughing is good medicine. And of course, as always, I always have to say, the funny stories that we end up sharing, whether it be open mic that's part of Imagine Listening and those in-person or virtual conference sessions, or open mic live that we do every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's the situation that people call in on, that we've got that humor about the situation itself, not the people, of course, because we're there to help the people. But some of those situations that happen, you end up thinking, like, is this real life? Is this really going on right now? And it does. And you would be surprised at some of the stuff that comes in when we're taking these calls. But either way, Imagine Listening was awesome there at the ranch, and I thank all of you for being there, and also for sharing stories. And even if you didn't share a story for Imagine Listening, it's okay, because it was awesome for you to be there and to share just the room with everyone, to be there in support of each other. Because what we're doing, it's a peer support session where we're sharing these hard stories and saves as well, and then of course the funny ones. But we're there in support of each other and healing and finding some form of closure through the power of storytelling. So again, thank you all so very much. It was an excellent time. And my guest today, I am excited to have him on. We're going to be talking about his story, but also as well as nonprofit co-founder of Goldline Support. And my guest today is John, he's communication officer with Melbourne Police Department out of Florida, and also once again co-founder of Goldline Support. What's up, man?
How are you?
I am doing good. I will say though that it was nice earlier before we got on and everything. I had to run a quick errand for a few things that I have planned this week, and the weather was completely different than waking up early in Texas, where it was kind of it was hot, but it was also kind of muggy and everything already. But here in Indiana, it was nice and cool. So it was different. The scenery is a little bit better in Texas, where I was at on that ranch.
Mhm.
But I'm good. I'm good, man. It's really good. How are things over in Florida?
Hot.
Yeah. I bet, man. I bet it's already super hot over there.
There's no such thing as cool weather here. It's always hot.
Right, that's
Yeah.
true. I always laugh with my mom and my sisters there, because they, it'll get towards winter time, and my sisters, they'll send pictures or whatever, selfies with them wearing like, big old sweatshirts and stuff, and I'll say, how
Yeah.
cold is it over there? And they're like, well, it's like in the 60s. It's like, man, that's like t-shirt and shorts over here in
Yeah.
Indiana.
It's funny, you see everyone walking around here in the winter with big jackets on and everything. And I'm from up north, so I'm like, I'm already here and I'm thinking 60s is cold, but everyone's wearing jackets around here when it's about 60s, and it's crazy. So
Yes, yeah. So I lived in Florida for about 3.5 years, and I, even just that little bit of time, I had not gotten fully adjusted. So I remember seeing that as well. People walking around like with straight up parkas, like with the hats that have like the fur around it. And I'm thinking, what do you do? So yeah, I'm looking at them weird, and of course they're looking at me weird, because like, why is he in shorts? Like, is this dude not cold? He must not be from around here. He's an outsider. But no, that's good, man. And it's good to have you on here, and I'm excited to learn more about you, especially Goldline Support. So let's start from the beginning. How did you start in public safety to begin with?
So I've been in public safety for 11 years, and I was just thinking about that when you sent me the questions, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm, been doing it for so long, and I'm only 25. So being 25 and doing it for 11 years is crazy. So I started off in New Jersey, a little town called Little Silver. And I volunteered as a cadet. So a cadet program, when you're younger in the high school ages, they allow high schoolers to come in and kind of gain the experience into emergency management and medicine and all that stuff. So freshman year of high school, I joined the cadet program, and I was able to answer first aid calls through the volunteer first aid squad, and just kind of built up from there. And senior year of high school, I became in high school, I became an EMT. And senior year of high school, I got hired with a first aid squad called Long Branch First Aid, which is one of the bigger cities, a little bit rough. But I started with them, and I worked with them through my senior year of high school, and got out of it and met many other people through the works. And they were like, hey, you should start dispatch. And I'm like, dispatch? What the heck is that? They're like, the people you talk to on the radio. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, so it interested me, sparked my interest. So I started as a summertime dispatcher there, this very, very tiny little beachside agency. Jersey's one of those places that every town has to have their own dispatch. Nothing's consolidated there. There's no such thing as consolidation. So another police department, worked for them for the summer, and I liked it. And of course that led to another police department, another beach town agency, and worked for them. And then finally was able to go back to where I started with Little Silver Police Department, where I kind of grew up in, and was able to do the first aid and EMS. So I know who I was talking to on the radio all the time and everything like that. So then one day I was like, screw it, I want to move. So I picked up and I moved to Florida. And that's where I started with the Highway Patrol. And I loved it. Highway Patrol was awesome. Met so many people, met so many troopers. And, you know, it's a state agency. So there was so much offered through the state agencies. And one of the biggest things that I think my accomplishments there were, I was able to go out to Hurricane Michael when it hit the Panhandle and tore up Mexico Beach and everything. I was able to go out and work out in Panama City on the command bus and dispatch the troopers because there was no radio reception. So we had to bring dispatch to them. So we were able to set that up and dispatch, and we had troopers from everywhere, all over Miami, FWC. So when that happened, we only sent one dispatcher out there, and they dispatched for everybody, the troopers, the FWC officers. We even assisted with the local agencies that lost their communication centers. But FHP Tallahassee was the main hub and the only agency that had radio communication across the areas that were taken out because all the cell towers were taken out. So that was kind of like where I started back in Jersey when I was 14 years old in EMS, and that led to a career in 911 now. So.
Jeez. Okay. So let's go back a little bit here.
Yeah.
So so starting out at that age and everything, what are some of the things that you got to listen to? Because, you know, working as a cadet and stuff, I have minimal knowledge on it just from hearing others talk about the program that they went through. And every program seems to be pretty different, but have some similarities. So what were some of the things that you got to do as a cadet, especially at that age, you know, some of the things that you were listening to and such?
Yeah, so our cadet program, I think, was we were like the most known to have a cadet program. We were the only agency in probably about a 10-mile radius that actually had a cadet program. So we had people from all over. And the biggest thing that we had was a school called Allied Health. And Allied Health was a high school for students that wanted to become nurses or doctors. And pretty much all their school was they had, you know, the academics of math and all that stuff. And then they had a whole other program where it was only strictly medicine. So they had, you know, life simulators and all that stuff. So we had a lot of students from there that lived in the local area. So it wasn't just Little Silver residents. We had Red Bank residents. We had other towns in that area. And the cadet program allows you to be able to act as, you couldn't vote or anything as a full member, but we had a good mentoring program through the members there to lead the, 16, 17, actually it started at age 15. So 15 to 17-year-olds actually gaining some knowledge into what they wanted to do. And we actually allowed them to respond out to calls. So they were able to go out on the ambulance, and depending on who you were with, at least when I was a member, I let the cadets do everything. I just overseed them because that's the only way they're going to learn is if they were able to do it. So we'd let them get in. They would start patient contact, patient care. They would do everything in the back of the ambulance, went on the way to the hospital. And then we also certified them in emergency medical responder. When they first joined, they had to have that order to ride the ambulance. And then we also put them through the EMT program, which is a 6-month program in New Jersey. And then when they pass that, they can also respond. And then when they turn 18, they become a full member. And then, so we had when I was on there, we had about 15 cadets on the squad, and we had monthly meetings. And those monthly meetings consisted, I'm a hands-on learner in the first place. So when I took over the cadet program, when I was there, everything to me was hands-on. It was all, let's do like stair chair. So we use the stair chair and we play with the stair chair and do, scenarios during that, or we do CPR scenarios. And then we also get the ambulance involved so they can actually work in the ambulance as we drove around the city, just so they can kind of feel that experience, because some of these cadets actually didn't go on calls. They used it more as a resume builder. But it was still something that they got the knowledge to use to go, especially when they went off to college, because a lot of these colleges have ambulance services on the college campus. So I've known a couple of them have gone off to college and they've kind of jumped on their ambulance service through their college to assist with that. And, they didn't have to go through any training because they were already certified. So that was kind of that. It's a very cool program. And I know the people that took over after I left, they're doing great with it. And they still have a really good following with the cadet program there. So,
man. Okay. So 1, that is freaking awesome. That is really cool. And 2, what was that like at that age for you going through that? And I ask because as you're talking about this and I'm listening to you, also in the back of my head, I'm thinking, damn, when I was 15, I was working at my first major job, which was it was called Lakeshore Convenience in Douglas, Michigan. It's still there, and I believe it's owned by the son now. But it was like a little convenience store, and we made pizza there and stuff. And I would switch between the one there in that city, but also in Fenville, the city that I was living in at the time growing up. They had another convenience store there, but it was called Shortstop. So while I'm 15 making pizza and selling, snacks and shit to people, you're in this program. So I'm comparing here, like, man, that had to have been, I guess eye-opening. Like, what was it like?
It definitely was eye-opening. I think it helped me grow up quicker, understanding what these incidences were. It helped me because my dad passed away from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And that was another thing. So I had to be able to help him out while I was young, but also going to see these incidents. And, when we talk about EMS and everything, you always just think about, oh, it's a, older lady that fell, stubbed their toe and fell, and I need help up. I mean, there's a lot more into it. The agency I came from, Little Silver, was not anything crazy. It was a very family-oriented community, but we saw things that 15-year-olds should never see. And that's one of the things that I, implemented in that program, was to kind of a peer support. If we're sending, one of the biggest things that we are, everybody on that, even the members, if we got in there and we assessed the situation that definitely a 15-year-old should not see, we would tell them that they have to hang out outside with the officers or whatever it is, just because we didn't want them to go home and, not really have a peer support level, just because we are volunteer. Right. So, I mean, I remember incidences like one of my first calls ever. I was so disgusted. It was a hoarder house, and you couldn't even walk down the hallway. And of course, this person's like all the way in the back of the residence where they couldn't even move. So you had to carry them out. But, a 15-year-old shouldn't really see anything. Granted, it was just a chest pain incident, but you shouldn't really see any things like that. So that was one of the things that we try to implement a lot. And I've seen a lot in my EMS career. And even like an 18-year-old, when I was working paid EMS, I had kids younger than me that was hit by trains, because we had a train, and an 18-year-old shouldn't see that. They shouldn't see a peer being run over by a train and stuff like that. I mean, the biggest thing was, even because I went to the high school there, I ran on calls for high school students. So that was one of the biggest things, especially seeing them in school the next day or later on. It was an awkward situation because you didn't want to really confront them. And some of it wasn't always good. There was a lot of drinking involved, but those are the things that I think that took me away, because I didn't take that path of going out and party hopping in high school. I was always, okay, I'm going to go on call. I'm on call. I'm going to go on ambulance call. And that was kind of me. And that's, even I brought my mom involved because someone had to drive me to the firehouse when I was younger. I wasn't able to drive. So I'm like, Mom, let's go. We have to go. So
throw that light and siren on. Let's go.
So those are and that's, it's true, because even some of our members, and that was a lot of the cadet things, that they couldn't come out to call. So we had to give them the opportunity. What can we do? But I'm very realistic. I don't like to when I do scenarios, I take scenarios based on calls I've done before, not just one of those scenarios of, okay, you have a fall victim. What are you going to do? Let's really do this. So,
right.
And EMS is I've always said, you always have to think out of the box. You can't think by the manual that is given to you. You have to, it's very, you're in the gray section there. You're not in the black and white section. You have to think out of the box and figure out how you're going to do things and move somebody. And, from my paid EMS experience to my EMS volunteer experience, especially as a cadet, I've learned so much, met so many different people. And I mean, I think that's gained skills for me. But the biggest thing is, it's very hard when a young person sees different things, especially, I mean, no 15, 14-year-old should see, a dead person. I mean, that they're not going to comprehend what is actually going on just yet, because they've never seen it. And that's very hard for them, especially CPR. CPR is not easy to just watch, you know what I mean? So it's definitely one of those things that you kind of need debriefings after that. And we would talk about it. We walked through the process and the scenario, just what we did there, ask them questions and stuff like that. Because when we were volunteer, we were BLS. We didn't do any ALS advancements. So we had an ALS unit and come, and then that's a whole other story what they're doing. So it's definitely a crazy scene for a young person to see.
Yeah, I can just imagine, man. Because when I got into dispatch, I was 19, and I kind of fell into it in Florida as well, Central Florida. But it was a small police department, and that first major incident that I had, where I'm thinking it's going to be over the phone, was right in my face. There was a lady who showed up. It was a suicidal call. She had found her husband, but she had walked into the police department to tell us about this, to get help over there. And it was, of course, my first day, going to be my first day alone after training. And the chief is getting ready to leave, and he's like, do you think you can handle this? I'm like, man, I got you. He's like, don't worry about it, we'll be fine. And I said, you're always listening to the radio anyway, so if something goes down that you think I need help with, you can come back. And we had a chuckle, and then that lady shows up, and I remember after that entire incident, I thought, man, like this is no joke. Like I was expecting it to be on the phone first, but it was face to face. And then from then on, it just kind of set the stage for everything that I was going to be getting into. And also, a lot of my friends were working and stuff, but they were also partying and everything else. And so it was kind of like you. It was a different dynamic. You've got a lot of people who are doing different things, but you're deep into work life, but also public safety, and some of the stuff that you're seeing or hearing that others probably wouldn't. But even more so for you, being even younger than that and getting into that, it completely built up a lot of different things. And I can see where a lot of this experience goes into dispatch, and eventually, which I know we'll get to this as well, co-founding Gold Line Support, but it's all from this experience and everything that you've gone through. So let's jump into going into dispatch. So now you're in high school as well, though, before this, and being an EMT. Let's jump on that just really quick here for a moment, because as you were saying, party scene, high school, other people doing other things, but you're on the rig and you are going to different calls and seeing shit that you really wouldn't see. And like you said, going into high school and seeing some of the people that you ran calls for. I remember being in dispatch when I moved back to Southwest Michigan. And of course, I was out of high school already for like 4 or 5 years at that time. But I would end up taking phone calls because I was working in the county that I grew up in. And the west side of the county, I knew everyone. And I would take phone calls from people that I went to high school with. I wouldn't always say my name, because you're kind of, on the line there where you say your name and someone will be completely comfortable, right? And they'll tell you everything and anything you want to know. Or now you know their business and they don't want to say anything anymore. And now you're having a struggle trying to get information. You're like, damn, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. So kind of go over that a little bit. You're in high school and you've run on calls with people. I mean, how awkward is that in a sense? But also kind of knowing at that time, even during that year, being in high school, that you're experiencing something that not a lot of people get to experience. Yeah. And you're digging it too.
Absolutely. It kind of goes both ways. And like you were saying, like you don't want to say your name, who you are, because they may stop telling you more information. But especially on the ambulance, I mean, you have strangers coming to you. You don't know who these people are, especially just everyday calls, not even someone that just, someone that got injured or something. They don't know who they are. You're touching them. And it's all that consent thing. Can I touch you? Can I do this? Whatever it is. But especially some of the high school kids that I ran on when I was in high school, I think I was I wouldn't say I was known in high school, but I also did a lot of extra activities after high school, especially with the sports and stuff like that. I was in sports medicine. We call them majors in our high school, sports medicine major. And then I was a student athletic trainer also. So I worked with the athletic trainer with all the sports, and a lot of the kids, of course, sports kids, they're always out drinking and everything like that. So a lot of the kids that I ran on, they kind of knew who I was. So I think it actually helped them calm down, because I was able to actually talk to them at a more of a peer level than just someone who is, a a cop who's irritated, or if it's simple, another EMT that was just irritated. So I think I was able to help with that aspect like that. But also be able to have the friendship between each other. But then there's also times that I didn't want to be involved. And I was kind of one of those, I was like, okay, I'll know this person. And especially at my age, when I wasn't driving the ambulance at the time, I would be like, all right, I'll just sit up front, or I'll just hang out behind the stretcher so they don't really know who I am. Or sometimes I would get on the call and I would say, hey, officer, can you just bring me back to the firehouse? Because there's incidents that you want to be involved in, and there's sometimes you just don't want to be involved in just to cause more issues. So those are things that I had to take. And then also talking to the lead EMT on the call, be like, hey, I don't think this is great. Or even the lead EMT goes, you may know this person. Let's hold off and see what's happening. And there's been calls like that. There's been some EMS calls that actually one was a suicide attempt, and it was one of the high school students. And I went to it not knowing it was a high school student. And unfortunately that I was able to see it, but it was one of those things that I had to kind of step back a little bit, because if I knew too much information at that young age, you're dumb and young, and you may say something later on to someone else in the school. So It's kind of one of those things that as an EMS side, those people have to kind of say, okay, step back. We can't let you know what's going on. And those are kind of the incidents. And it's good that we have those kind of leaders in these agencies, because at least to be able to recognize, to say, nope, this is not for you, or yeah, this is right up your alley. Let's go for it. So.
Yeah, that is really good, because then, sometimes you have some of those hard asses that are like, that's the way they came up. So that's how you're going to come up. They're going to do the same thing to you. But there are, like you were saying, there are others out there who do recognize that. And it's always good to have that, because I think you learn a little bit different, and you get more comfortable with it as well, versus the other way around, where it's like, I did it, and now you're going to do it this way too. And you're like, okay, well, did you struggle? Because if you did, can you tell me how to deal with that too? And of course, I'm probably not going to say anything. They're like, no, man, you're going to learn yourself. And that sucks. But it's good that you had that support. So then you're going through all of this, you have all this experience. They tell you go into dispatch, you're like, huh? And then you start going for it. Did you get to do like a sit along or anything before you ended up getting hired in?
No. So this agency, So this agency was, it was called Deal Police Department, which is, no joke, it's like 1.5 miles long. It was very, very tiny, but it was a huge Jewish population. It was where the Jewish population from New York, this is they're pretty much their beach town. So we didn't have a lot of calls for service, especially EMS wise, because the Jewish population does have a company called Hatzola, or they have their own ambulance program, Hatzola. So we were able to do that. So a lot of it, the Deal Police Department covered 3 little towns. They just consolidated, and their dispatch was pretty much all of them. And I had no idea what I was doing, but luckily it wasn't anything crazy. And then when I started Bradley Beach Police Department, which is another small, that's when shit hit the fan.
Oh no.
I no idea what I was doing, because I was still kind of new to it.
Yeah.
The summer job only lasted about 3 months. And then I was in Bradley Beach, and this is where it was like a legit beach town, where it was a public beaches, water rescues. And I'm like, God damn it. So, and it was busy. Of course, I had the black cloud over me. So every time I worked, it was busy. And that's kind of where I started to gain the experience level, I think, there, because I am one that I can't sit down. I have to be able to do something all the time. So it's good, that kept me busy. And that was one of those things that, like, I enjoyed it a lot. I met so many different people, and it actually led to a career that I also didn't think it was going to happen, which was a special law enforcement officer. So in Jersey, we have things called Special Law Enforcement Officers 1 and 2. And pretty much it's a rent-a-cop. And, and, they use them as like, a step into law enforcement. So you'll start to, especially in the summer, a lot of the police agencies in the summer hire special law enforcement officers. So it's a 2-week pretty much police academy that they end up teaching, like, the basics of, 6 months turned into 2 weeks of law enforcement. So it's like parking, you handle parking, you're able to do, depending what agency you work for, liquor violations on the beach, glass violations, again, parking, and then stop out and do, we call them FIs, but field interviews, just talk to somebody, see how it is, and then community policing. So that also led into a career with Bradley Beach, where I was able to do that. And, if I wasn't working dispatch, I could go out there for some of their big events because they did, a lobster fest and they had 4th of July and all this stuff. And of course that led into one night a foot pursuit, which I was not expecting. So it was one night we were working, I was on nights with them, and we were patrolling the beach, and they had tents because it's like a weekend event, and they set all these tents up, and pretty much they leave all their merchandise in these tents. And that's why they have the officers just kind of hang out on the boardwalk. And of course there's some teenagers going through them, and someone yelled and it was like, "Hey, you." And I'm like, "Why did you yell?" And of course they start taking off,
Right.
And who knows if they had something. So we start running down all the streets trying to find them. And in the middle of it, I call it on the radio, and the dispatcher's like, "Stand by." And I'm like, so at the end of it, because they were like, "Stand by, we're dealing with the suicide." And I'm like, okay, not knowing, because I still wasn't fully, involved in dispatch and everything like that. And later on I go talk to him like, "Why did you tell me to stand by? I was in a foot pursuit." She's like, "In that case, you should have just yelled foot pursuit." I'm like, "I didn't know." So
man.
I only did that for a little bit, and then went to Little Silver, and I was also class 1 with them, but I did a lot more dispatching because they were very short staffed, and they actually, one of their full timers went out, and that's how I got the job, was pretty much covering the full. So I was a part-time dispatcher, but worked the full-time hours with them because that full-time dispatcher was out on medical. So that's kind of where that led, and that gained a whole nother experience because it was a little bit larger agency, little bit busier, a lot of traffic. We had very proactive officers. So, gain more experience, and, you're single dispatcher working, 2 different radio channels, your fire EMS and then your police radio. And then plus we had a countywide channel for the county and stuff like that. So, and then we also had a big high school. So that kind of also added more. So you gain more stuff as a bigger agency when you get more involved in depth with, school resource officers and larger police or larger fire and EMS and stuff like that. So,
man, dude, that's a lot, man. That's a lot to take in, especially, the foot pursuit alone, going through all of that. So you've got all of this experience that you're building up, and you're doing that portion of it, and then you get into more into the dispatch role and stuff. Now, did you find that it was hard at all? So a couple things here. Did you find that it was hard at all to kind of transition from always kind of being that hands-on to now just, kind of being over the phone and not being able to be that hands-on? And the reason I asked too is because I had a couple of coworkers who had transitioned. Well, they didn't fully transition. They were still doing EMS and everything, but they would say certain things on the phone, and we'd be like, "No, you can't do that." And they would say, "Well, that's how we do it out in the field." And I'd say, "You're not in the field, dude. Like, we've got different procedures. You're EMD certified, and you have to go through this, or that's a liability." So it was kind of hard for that transition. But also the second part of this is, when you really got into dispatch more, was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, so coming into dispatch, it was hard because I had to sit in a chair and I couldn't move around as much.
Right, yeah.
And me being like proactive, I was always wiping down the counters. I was always organizing something, when I was slow. And, one of the things is, like you were saying, like your friend, you get on the phone and you want to do more than you're allowed. Because we know a lot of the terminologies, and that's one of the biggest things I push for is learn your terminologies, because there's terminologies that, the field people use, fire and EMS side, that dispatch would never know what it is. So being able to talk more and maybe not even give instruction, but you can gain a little bit more information out of a caller, especially I think with that field experience, because you know what you're looking for in the field. But I would say, yeah, it was definitely interesting transition, because it's just one of those things that you're able to actually hands-on do it, and now you're thinking, okay, picturing it in your head on what is actually going on. So you're trying to get them to paint a better picture so you understand what's going on, because in EMS you don't really need that. You
Right.
have the picture when you get there. So that's one of the things as dispatchers, you try to pitch I've always done it, and I think that's one of the things that I've gone through, and reason why we start creating Gold Line Support too, is that dispatchers create bad pictures in their head because they want to picture the worst than it really is. And that, I think, it makes it even worse coming from the field, because you do think about, okay, what is it? And then even at EMS, on the way to the call, you always thought about, okay, what am I walking into? and you always picture it worse than it really is. So those are kind of one of, definitely it's hard, especially being on the phone and just trying to gather the information. But I think I've gained skills from coming on the field, going in there, because I know what questions I really want to ask.
See, in having someone with your experience coming in is a great asset, not just for those who are calling in, but those who are out in the field, and also those that you're working with there within your own center, because you're able to actually kind of bridge that gap. And I think, this past few days when I was out there at the ranch, I was talking to a few attendees there, and they were talking about building kind of like this culture, right, with dispatch, but also those out in the field, and how do you get people to come together? And what I had told them was one of the things that we did that really helped us was having dinners, that we would have some of the officers come in, whether it be the state, the sheriff's office, some of the city ones, but also like fire and EMS, to come in, and we would sit down and we would eat, we would have these dinners and stuff. But it was also us having conversations, because what is it, we're the best at communications, but communicating with each other sometimes not the greatest, right? So
Absolutely.
that was one of the biggest things, was us actually communicating with them and them with us, so that we could understand how and why they do certain things, and then vice versa as well. And it really bridged that gap completely, to be able to just fully understand and work better together.
Yep.
It's
absolutely
basically how it went down. So, in your experience, you coming from the field and then coming into dispatch, I can see that, you would be able to bridge that and help others learn a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it definitely helps, because even now people will turn around and be like, John, what does this medical terminology mean? Or what does this mean? And I'm able to be like, okay, yeah, that's this, and this, and understand it. Or even apparatus, like they'll talk about, like even now we have some dispatchers get structure fires, and they're like, what is they just named something. I don't know what they said. What is they talking about? And, a trash line, what's a trash line? And we're like, oh, that's this. And we're able to describe it and tell them what it is. And they're like, oh, that makes much more sense. Now I understand what they're talking about. So it does definitely help. And that's one of the things I definitely push at our agency, is learn that stuff, especially in new trainees. When I train someone on the fire radio and stuff, hey, understand these terminologies, understand what some of the slang they're talking, because they talk that kind of slang. And that's something you need to understand in dispatch, because if you miss that, it could be life or death sometimes. So
yeah, and I remember one of the things that I was taught early on in my career was the house, like when you're standing in front of the house, how it's like A, B, C, and D, like the sides of it, and I never. I thought it would come up someday, but man, it was like years later when I'm working a call, and the chief is out there. And he yelled out one of the sides of the house, and he yelled out a letter. And I remember one of my partners was like, I don't know what he's talking about. And I was like, he's talking about this side of the house. And they're like, what? And I held up like my fire cards, because I was looking through some cards afterwards. I was like, it's right here. And they're like, oh. I was like, you don't remember that?
And it's true. It's true. Sometimes you don't use it. You learn it, and then you never use it. And then that one time you need it, it's like, oh yeah, that was it. That was like 6 years ago.
I was surprised I remembered it, man. Like he said it and it just like clicked right away.
Yeah.
And then I had to, because the person was like, that's not right. That's not true. You just guessed that. I'm like, no, man, that's why I was looking through my cards. I was like, see, it's right here. And they're like,
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, maybe I do remember that. So walking into dispatch though, do you remember walking in and seeing like all the screens? Like, did you ever for a moment feel overwhelmed? And I asked because when I went to the central dispatch of the county that I grew up in, when I started working there, it was completely different than the single seat, 8-hour only, one dispatch per shift little police department that I started out at. We had 3 to 4 people on at all times, and there's several screens. And I remember walking in that first night and watching someone working it, talking on the radio, being on the phone at the same time, typing, yelling over, but also eating at the same time. And me thinking, damn, I don't know if am I going to be able to do this? So like for you, do you remember walking in and seeing all of it and thinking like, I mean, what was it like for you when you walked in?
Yeah, so absolutely. So the single dispatch agencies, it's like, okay, you got this one computer, this one little desk, like small little agency, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And going into FHP was where I was like, whoa, this is a lot. Walking in, 15 consoles, 8 people on the floor, the phones are ringing, multiple people are talking, 6 screens in front of you. And I was like, wow, this is a lot. What do I put on all these screens? Like how much software could you use? So, and then sitting with somebody, one of my first days, I'm like, wow, okay, now I understand why you have so many screens. Oh, I understand why you're talking. And it's like, where are you even pushing a button from? And you have this foot pedal on the ground, and that's my best friend, So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of one of those things. It's like, you don't, it's kind of realistic. Like you hear, and even you watch all these TV shows and it's like dispatch, and like, that's not even what a 911 center looks like. Come on, people, get with the program. But you walk in and it's like a lot more messier, and, you see papers everywhere. And granted, some agencies are old school still. Like we're somewhat old school, so we still have paper stuff that we do. And I know FHP, we're getting away from that when I was at FHP. So definitely is one of those things. It was like, wow, like this is real. Like this is how many screens you use, and then you kind of get used to it and figure out where you're putting what on each screen and stuff like that.
Man, do you remember some of your first phone calls that came in? Some of those earlier ones? Do you remember any of those earlier ones?
Yeah. So FHP, FHP was very like, I have a traffic crash. I have a traffic crash. I didn't really deal with it, but we did have some, like the sheriff's office. Some of the sheriff's office out there were not always the best, and they would transfer anything that had a car. Someone would be like, a car, and they'd be like, okay, FHP, and we'd get it. And next thing you know, it'd be, a domestic in progress or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't really remember many of those, but in here in Melbourne, when I'm with Melbourne, I've taken a couple calls that have kind of sat with me. One of the ones wasn't even our city. It was another agency just south of ours, and it was a father coming home to find their son that was hanging in their bedroom. And one of those, it's like, we don't do any EMD work. We transfer all of our calls to the county fire rescue to do all the EMD work, but we work together. So the county will take over the medical aspect of it. And then when they're done, they'll say, whatever police agency, you're ready to take the call back over, and we take the call back over. So that was one of those things that, like, the father, just trying to get the father to understand that we are on the way. Number one, we're not just holding you on the phone because we want to hold you on the phone,
right?
But we are coming to you, but we have these questions, and we're going to try to help you before the responders get there. So that was one of the ones that sat with me, and usually the ones that involve death always sit with me for some reason. But like we've had that one. I've had another one where they found their loved ones in a bathtub, and that one was just horrific. That, again, that wasn't even in our city, and it was another agency that their just call volume was so bad that it rolled over to us, and we take them. And, trying to talk them out of it, and, being on a radio and being with them on the phone, and then also talking to the other agency saying, this is what I have. You need to start sending people out there. Just trying to get her to leave the house was the hardest part. Like, she did not want to leave the house because it was, they're beyond help. And that's one of the questions we usually ask. Are they beyond help, or do you think we can help them? And if they can help them, we will try to help them. But if they're beyond help, we try to get them away, because now it's a crime scene. And they don't understand that. And they want to be like, no, I can't leave. And like, just step out of the house, like go outside and step out of the house. And it's not just because of the crime scene aspect. It's a way to get them away from the situation too. Right. And then we can get them away from the situation and talk about completely something different to take their mind off of it. And a lot of dispatchers don't understand that too. Is like, I know some agencies, like, we're very short staffed right now, and it's hard to stay on the phone with people. But sometimes just talking to somebody and walking them through, talking to them about something completely different than what the incident is, to take their mind off of the incident, to just calm them down. And as we know, we are the ones that calm people down for the responders. So when the responders get there, hey, they're going to come and ask you a lot of questions, and understanding that. And that's, again, I think something that I've came from on the field aspect, is being able to kind of understand what I'm going to be walking into and how many questions I'm asking, and then coming from the EMS side saying, hey, they're going to come in, they're going to ask you all these questions and all. So just start thinking about this, but I need you to stay calm for them, because you staying calm is going to help them do their job faster. But I've taken some calls. The one that I sit with and I think about all the time was one not too long ago. Was at a hotel, and the mom calls, and she's screaming at the top of her lungs. And I'm like, what is going on? I mean, with the technology now, we don't our policies changed a little bit where we're not demanding someone the location.
Mhm.
Some agencies are still demanding a location before they do anything else. But I know where this person is. It's plotting right at the hotel. I know it's a shitty hotel. And I'm like, what is going on? And she's screaming. And I'm like, ma'am, what is going on? And meanwhile, think about it. We have 5 dispatchers in the room. And all 5 dispatchers are on a phone already. They're all on 911s. And our 911s are still ringing. So, and this is one incident out of all these other incidences. And I'm on primary police radio. Our primary police radio does not answer phones.
Oh, man.
So I'm on the phone with this lady screaming at the top of her lungs. I'm like, what is going on? He's shot. I'm like, who is shot? And she's like, my son. I'm like, okay, where are you? Confirm your location. She's like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get you over to the ambulance and we're going to get the ambulance on the way. So I'm transferring over to fire rescue. At the same time, we tone our channels every time it's a high priority call. So I tone the channel. I'm like, all available units respond to the reference to shooting, because I'm still landline with this caller. And of course, now all my officers are like, Melbourne, what is going on? I'm like, I'm landline, stand by, try to get you more information, just head that way. And that's one of those things. And I have to, thank my coworkers, because eventually my coworkers get off their phones and they're able to take that call over and they start asking questions.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a great, great teamwork thing. And anytime I tell people, I said, this is where teamwork comes into play, understanding what are people doing, because no one actually said, John, are you on a call? They heard me on a call and they just took it over from me.
Yeah.
And to me, that shows great teamwork. And then also I was able to do my job, what I needed to do to get people out there for the safety of my officers. So that's one of the biggest calls that reside with me all the time, because I think that's a great call to talk about in training aspect, to understand what people are doing in the room. We deal with all the time that people are not even paying attention and they stamp the same call. A suspicious person on the side of the road, we get 4 calls stamped. It's like, hello, do you not pay attention to what other people are talking about in the room, or do you not look at the screen to see what calls are coming in? So it's a great training resource. That call I use is understand what people are saying, what people are doing, and what calls are coming in. So.
Yeah, I fully agree, man, because those are one of the things that I remember as well in dispatch. When you have calls like that, there were always one of 2 things. One, like you said, you're saying things out loud, you're repeating things out loud so that everybody else in the room is aware of what it is that you're doing or what you're taking as well. Even if it's not them knowing exactly what you're taking, they know it's high priority because of what you're saying. And, maybe your voice, going up a little higher as well. But also one of the other things that I would always know that someone had a crazy call that was coming up is because they're typing hard and they're typing fast.
Yeah.
and whenever, if I was the one on main radios and I heard that and I didn't hear them, like maybe they're not saying anything because they're listening to just whatever's going on in the background at the moment, but they're just and I'd be waiting. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be toning this bitch out because this sounds like it's gonna be crazy. And sure enough, it always would end up being like that. But you're right, man. A lot of times, we're sitting there in dispatch, right, having a conversation or whatever, and then a phone call comes in and everyone goes right into what is going on, working like a well-oiled machine, and having that teamwork going through on a call, just like, you're saying now. And, it's an interesting job to begin with. But and it's always hard to explain it to somebody who has not been in it or has not done it. You have to go through everything and almost whiteboard it out for someone to understand what you're saying. But would you feel then that, out of all of this experience, and especially these calls that you say that kind of really stick with you and everything, was kind of, one of the big aha moments for Gold Line support? Like, how did this start?
So it all started in 2021, where we went to the Texas APCO conference. So I was on a console project for our new building that we're building, and one of the things my manager said is, hey, we're going to send you to the APCO conference to look at the consoles. So one of the nights, I met a ton of different people, and I think that was the best thing that I ever could have done, because the supervisor I went was a little salty that I wasn't hanging out with him all the time. But I was like, but this is a new experience for me. This is me to meet people. I said, you go out and do your own thing too. Meet different people. Like, we don't just have to stay within our county. And that's something I push for everything. I said, don't don't stay at your agency, go meet other people from other agencies.
Exactly.
So I met all these different people from Delaware, Massachusetts, and Louisiana, Texas, everywhere. And one night the photos on our website, but it had to have been at least 40 people sitting outside of a hotel bar. And we were talking about our agencies. And one of the things came up was peer support. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, we don't have that, or we have it, but it's not really in place, or we don't have peer support. We have CISM. And I'm like, no, CISM's a little bit different. So one of the things that we talked about was creating this Facebook group and having more of there's tons of dispatch Facebook groups out there, but we wanted to be able to have a spot where people can chat back and forth, but be able to share their stories, but also get recommendations from other dispatchers across the US. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of where it started. And I took it as my RPL project, actually. And it launched a lot quicker than what we thought it was going to be. So we got it. We had people following, and we were like, we have to do more. So my partner, my other co-founder, Paige Martin, who's with Bossier County Sheriff's Office in Louisiana, we kind of hit this up, and we started this thing called Sunshine Dispatcher Awards. So we want to be able to, the simple thing of Goal Line Sport is we want to be able to recognize the people that are dispatchers that do the everyday job, but also be able to provide them some type of health and wellness too. So we talk about the health and wellness aspect. We have the actual wellness side where it's the exercise and not sitting down all the time. But then we also have the mental health where we have people that are going through PTSD, anxiety, depression. A lot of my dispatchers have IBS. So we want to be able to provide them the resources and things to do to not let them leave 911, because that's our biggest thing. We have people leaving 911 left and right because of this. We want to do the early intervention, be able to educate the people to recognize what they're going through, and then asking for help. So there's tons of groups out there that do the aftermath. We want to be able to do the beginning math, understand that and help them. So we have done the Sunshine Dispatcher Award. We have tons of them that have been put in, but anyone that puts in for them right now, they get it. It's like I said, it's a simple recognition. They get a certificate with some stickers. And then we have, luckily, Zybex has sponsored us so far. So Zybex is offering, actually I have the cup right here. They're offering these really cool cups.
Nice.
And they actually got them made for us, and we put their logo on the back. So we have a bunch of these that we're giving away with certain aspects of, some of the awards we're doing and whatnot. And those are, and like I said, it's a simple recognition aspect. And then we just brought a wellness coordinator on. I worked with her in Long Branch. She has 25 years plus experience in law enforcement. As a sergeant, worked in homicide, detectives, sex crimes, child crimes, all this stuff. And she's currently working on her doctorates in health and wellness. So we're very excited to have her as an asset for us. And then we also just did a team member application where we just brought on, I think we brought on 8 new members to help us. So we're going to kind of create committees where they're going to be able to kind of take it as their own, be part of our group, but do what they want to, bring into our group to help them. So one of the things that someone just brought up to me was, what about, we do the peer support for our dispatchers. What about their spouses and families? And I said, that's something you don't think about a lot, actually. So
right.
That's something we probably are going to we're having a meeting actually on Thursday that we're going to discuss that, because one of the things is you come home and you're like, screw you, I don't want to talk to you tonight. What as a family member, you kind of you're kind of as taken back on that, and and not even just a family member, roommates, children, animals too. You think about your own animals. You come home and you don't really talk to your animals. Your animals are always like, hey, I want to go outside and play. And
right.
You don't want to do anything. Granted, you can't, we can't do that, but at least the family members understand what they're going through. So we want to be able to, that might be another aspect that we may take and educate. So we're doing we want to start doing a lot of education, but we also want to start being able to offer different things for the dispatchers across the US. So I just looked today on our private page, we have about 805 members that have joined our private page. So we are small, but we are getting there, and we're getting members, left and right. And I just saw Kern County in California. They just did a post because one of their dispatchers just got the communication, and we have had 2 agencies so far, one in California and one in here in Florida, that actually have done like their own thing. So the one in here in Florida actually did like an assembly just for our award. And I thought that was really cool. So it wasn't just the simple of us just handing them an award. They actually said, hey, someone was nominated through our agency, through Gold Line Support, and they actually did a whole thing and a post on their Facebook page and everything. So it's really cool that we're able to get out there like that and show that we're able to recognize those people out there. So, going back to the beginning stages, when we were talking about the peer support level, we've talked about there's so many different types of peer support too. And, one of the peer supports we want to hit on is just the simple recognition and being able to help the people that are doing the job and get them the help that they need. So we have some goals, we have some things coming up that we're going to be working on. One of the things right now is because we are starting to get bigger is our sponsorships, getting people to help sponsor us because we are considered a nonprofit now. So we are trying to get that helping out. And then plus we can be able to do a lot more. And we have some cool ideas that maybe you may be able to help us out with eventually, but we're looking at possibly doing a online virtual conference for health and wellness. That's awesome. That's one of our big projects that we want to be able to do here in the next year. And then plus we have some classes coming up. We have actually a class coming up here on the 28th done by our coordinator, health or wellness coordinator. She's certified in breathing techniques, and we're going to be doing once a month with her where she's going to offer some type of stress relief tips. So one of the things she's going to do is it's called Breathe Within 911. And she's going to offer how breathing can help us relieve our stress. So, and she's like, all this could be done at her desk. And it's going to be about an hour and a half long, and it's virtual. And we do have signups you can go to the website or our Facebook page and you can sign up there, and it's free right now. We're doing free stuff.
That's awesome.
That's where we're at right now. Like I said, we have a lot more that we want to do. It's just the commitment and, hopefully we can get some sponsorships to help us out here. So
nice, man. I'm a firm believer in those breathing techniques as well. If I could go back in time and talk to myself, that would be one of the things. So two things. One, get into yoga a lot sooner because my ass is sitting down all the time like everybody else. And this is the stupid thing too, is, we had consoles that would go up. And I can count probably on my hands how many times I actually stood up during that time. So I would go back and tell myself not to be a dumbass, actually use that more, but also get into yoga more to keep my back and neck and everything stretched out. Because what is it that we do sometimes when we're sitting at the console, or not even in dispatch, just in general, we end up sitting and we're, our shoulders are up like this and we don't even realize. And once we put them down, it's almost like, it's like
relaxed.
Yeah, you get relaxed and everything, and that pressure is gone. But not just that, also the breathing techniques. Towards the last year and a half that I was in dispatch, I really got into meditation and breathing techniques. And while on the phone, on a crazy call or whichever, I was able to keep myself calm, as well as the caller, of course, as I did all the time. But it was different because now I'm practicing these breathing techniques while I'm on the phone with someone. And no, it doesn't put you to sleep, for those who are listening and watching. It's just to kind of center yourself, right?
Correct.
And to take some of that stress away. So definitely, those are some of the big things there. As we're going into the wrap up of this episode, which has been awesome, man, to have you on here, hear about your story, all of your experience and everything that you've gone through. And of course, being co-founder and everything of Gold Line Support and everything that you're doing. If you could go back in time to talk to yourself at the beginning, with the knowledge that you have now, what is some of the advice you'd give yourself?
I would have to say, definitely, I'd be proud of myself because I've come so far of what I've done. But I would probably I've said I probably would have chosen a different career route. Because granted, I love this career. And we all say there's no money in it, but it's true. I love helping people. But I absolutely think that I would have done a lot better if I stayed in the field. I really like the field. The problem with it is that it is a very wear and tear on your body too. So that's kind of a reason where I took that dispatch career. And I actually thought about going into the law enforcement aspect too. But I would have, if anything, I would have probably have stuck on the ambulance side of it and really took a career out of that, because I do love that aspect. I teach a lot of medical stuff still. And that's what I would have probably said, not to get into dispatch, because I do like that. And I think about it all the time, like, should I leave dispatch and go into it? But I put so much dedication and education into 911 now that it would be dumb for me to leave. So
right.
But I love it, and I started this nonprofit now. So this is something else that's keeping me busy and doing, and I love it. And this is where it's going to continue myself. But I would have 100% went up to, flight medic. That was always my ultimate goal, was becoming a flight medic.
Oh, man, that would have been awesome.
And that was always, and I actually have friends that are flight medics still in New Jersey, and they love it. But it's definitely, they've been in a paramedic for a really long time, and they just got it. So that would have been one of those things that you would have to sit out and wait for yourself for a long time, just like
that's
where
for
I'm
sure.
Go.
Right.
I'm on a frontline dispatcher. I love to move up to supervisory level or management level. Or even, coordinator for 911 system. That's something that's right up my alley, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to sit out and wait and find the right place to go for it, because where I'm at now, I love my agency. I love the people I work with, but we're small and there's no advancement. So it's one of those things that you kind of sit out and wait and find the path that you can take, or someone swoop you up and take them with you. So
that's true, man.
One of those things.
When one door closes, another one might just open. So you never know, dude. It has been awesome to have you on here. And how can people find out more about you, Goldline Support, social media, email, website, all that good stuff? How can people find more about you?
Yeah, so we have a website, goldlinesupport.com. On there, there's a bunch of the education and information there. I'm on Facebook, just my name. Instagram, I'm on that. LinkedIn, I'm also on that. And then email just is to email me, info@goldlinesupport.com. That will route out to Paige and I. So either one of us, you have a question about Goldline Support, or even if you want to get involved, we are looking for people to help teach some courses through there and whatnot. So if you're interested in teaching and you're one that wants to do that, reach out to us and we'll get you on.
Perfect. All right, man. Well, it has been awesome to have you on here. Thank you so much for the job that you do, and man, all the experience you have. This has been really cool to find out more about you and learn your story, and keep doing what you do, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I will be right back here with you in just one moment. For those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91 podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is Within the Trenches podcast, facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. And then this has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Carbine, and shout out to patrons as always. Thank you very much. If you want to become a patron and help support us, you can go to patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.